I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello, and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I'm an editor at TheRinger.com, and I'm about to be joined in the studio by Andy Greenwald, and Andor creator Tony Gilroy will be on the other line. We're going to talk to Tony about the last 3 episodes of the second season of Andor, so obviously this is a spoilerific conversation. I would recommend you finish Andor and then fire this interview up. Tony talks about things that happened in the last 3 episodes, things that happened over the last 2 seasons, the entire process of coming to the Star Wars world and working in it for these years. And it's an awesome conversation. Honestly, Tony is one of our favorite guests to have on the show. And to get this insight into Andor over the last couple of years, these last 2 seasons, has been so awesome. So I hope that you enjoy this interview with Tony Gilroy. It's our entire episode for this Tuesday. And we'll be back on Thursday to talk a little bit more in depth about the end of Andor and some other shows. Everybody enjoy this interview with Tony Gilroy. Andy and I are so honored to have Tony Gilroy back on The Watch to talk about season 2 of Andor, which just aired its final 3 episodes of the series. Tony, first of all, man, I guess we've probably said this in various ways over the last couple of times we've talked, but what an astonishing accomplishment. And thank you. Honestly, thank you for making this show. I wanted to start, since we have you here with these last 3 episodes, I was watching and, obviously you're processing so much narrative while it's happening. And as I rewatched them, it really struck me how much maybe the theme of these last 3 was about the children of Luthen, and these Cassian and Clea and Vel kind of coming to terms with their experiences with Luthen and what he taught them, but also what he didn't teach them and what they had to learn for themselves. And I just wanted to see if you could talk to me a little bit about, for you emotionally and thematically, what these last 3 episodes were to you and what you were trying to communicate.
I'm not sure I was entirely in charge of what I think has emerged. I mean, we talked about that last time, about how much of the show making and how much of the process is a surprise to me in the end, in a weird way, that the larger things reveal themselves. I think we were all, as we went to mix, as we went to finish, we were all just all the people that have been communally part of that process for the last 5 years. At the end of the line, time, really what time and you're right. There is a communal father, daughter, father, son, father, absent father element to it. But it's bigger than that to me. It's really those 5 women that end up at the end, the survivors at the end. I wasn't prepared for. I didn't start off going, well, I'm going to have these 5 chess pieces left at the end of the game, and it's going to be so groovy because we'll have really put them through their paces. I was surprised to see how I felt at the end, to have them all there and all the detail work. I was talking to Danny yesterday, my brother, because he's out doing some interviews and doing some press for us. And so many people have deep feelings about the show, and they're saying all the things that you want to have them say. And some of them are so big, and the way you build it is so small and practical along the way. And we were just marveling at our own lack of perspective as we went along. And, we just kept hammering all the way. And in the end, you end up with this other thing. I'm not sure. That's a really crappy answer to a really interesting question. I think the breakaway from Luthen is very much a big part of the show, obviously for these characters. And I think it's also if you're talking about the revolutionary aspect and how revolutions come together and how coalitions come together, I think the show is more successful than I had anticipated at talking about how difficult that is to do, and what happens to the originators often in any kind of a movement or any kind of a show or any kind of project. What happens to the originators?
I think that one of the things that shocked me about the finale, Tony, was like I knew you've been saying in interviews for the beginning now for years that the brief was to get a character from, in this case, childhood to the beginning of Rogue One. I don't think I believed you until I watched these last two episodes to realize how specifically you walked him right up to the beginning of that movie. Could you talk a little bit more about how the moments you were just describing, having these emotional chess pieces in play, how that emerged to you over the course of writing? Like when you were plotting and breaking season 2, you knew what happens to Cassian at the end of the season. But how did the rest of the story emerge so that even when you were getting into production, you knew you would have a satisfying crescendo?
Well, the shoreline of the show, I could have, of all the things that I could not anticipate and all the things that emerged along the way, the one thing that never would have surprised me is the final montage of the show. I mean, that was kind of always, I think if you asked Danny or Johnny or Bo or Zana or any of us along the way, we would have probably given you a pretty accurate description of what the final moments of the, not the very final moment of the show, but that walk to the ship, that was always, let's have him walk to the ship. I bet it's going to end up, if we can avoid having it be in slow motion, that would be great. I'm sure it'll have a montage of who's ever left and, whoever we can afford to pay for that episode if we're bringing people in, and how much attendance can we take? I think we had that from minute one. I think we owned that from the very beginning. And I think Diego's the first person who put their finger on it. We were out on the first junket describing the fact that what made the show possible, and at that point we knew what we were going to start to do for the second season, was that we knew where we were going. We've always known where we were going. We were going for that final bit. And that's half the answer. What was the first half of the question?
I guess about the other emotional moments that as they emerged to sort of fill in the blanks that you alluded to in your answer to Chris.
I mean, I felt so deeply about so many of these people. I mean, I remember thinking about Anton Lesser while we were shooting the first season, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy is just such a rock for me, and he's just so important. And he's talk about the writer's best friend. I mean, if someone did a supercut of all his scenes and you watch all the exposition that he's laying down without anybody knowing it, it's pretty masterful.
I think Tony, when he says "bad luck, Gorman," I don't know if that was the first take, if that was the only take, but that's one of the best line deliveries in the history of the show.
He doesn't need much. He's kind of just add water performer, actor, artist. But I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about where I was going to end up with him. And I thought, boy, he really needs a full stage to himself to do this. And I was so happy to be able to combine him with Alex Lothar and be able to do that. That was really one of the happier moments of discovery. But if you're sensing, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed at the response, but I've been overwhelmed. I'm resurrecting my feelings from the fall when we finished the show, of being overwhelmed by never having worked on something that's this long or big. Usually a movie, you work on it for a year and a half. It's a pretty familiar time frame. It's something you get used to after, it's like being a Central Park horse or something. You know how to go, you know exactly where to go, exactly how it's going to feel. This was so different in every way that I'm sure, David Kelly or, John Wells or the people who've done this for millions of times, I'm sure they're very experienced in the tempo of this. I'm not. And so I'm unprepared I was unprepared for how I felt when we finished. And I'm unprepared for the reaction to the show as well. It's a bit overwhelming. So you're catching me, last day of COVID and a bit blown back by many things. So I'll try not to cry, but
Yeah, Jalen Brunson leading a revolution of his own.
I know, Jalen Brunson. What a great Star Wars name, too.
It's great that you brought up Anton Lesser, because as I was rewatching the last few episodes, my favorite thing to do right now is, you have to do this first pass on these episodes and you got to get the plot and you got to get the moments. And then you go back and there are these in-between scenes that are just mind-blowing. And one was that really stood out to me is after Clea is in the wind, the Partagaz Krennic scene. And when Krennic says, "I can't protect you, Leo," And the reason it jumped out at me was there's this whole thread of their relationship in that one line that I don't think is explicitly referenced anywhere else in the series. And it's one thing to have characters with backstories, but it's another thing to have back relationships or back cross stories. And I just have to tip my cap to you, but also ask, like, those guys must have come up together.
Yeah, no, great call. Great call. No, I mean, absolutely great call. Totally. It tells you, yeah, I certainly never went back and did well, those guys don't need a resume anyway, but I mean, I'm assuming they went to the Naval Academy together, or they were in the ISB, torture tutorial or whatever, whatever the
torture prep school.
Yeah, they were all in there together. They have a relationship. It's so those are the kinds of things. It's like I've learned that now over time, how effective an accurate little jab like that can be. You identified it last time. I mean, Denise Goff's backstory. I was raised in an Imperial Kinderblock. I mean, she doesn't say much, but it gets the whole job done. And just to say Leo, and just the way he says it, and Ben understood exactly what it was. Yeah, they've been through everything together. And I'm sure there's different times where Partagas has been the alpha in that relationship as well.
Following up on that, I just wondered about, this is going to sound very broad, but as a writer, your relationship with negative space.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it in terms of Clea, who really emerges this season as a hero in her own right, and then in these last few episodes as one of the most crucial characters in the series. She is sort of just hiding in plain sight for so much of it, both for the ISB and for the audience. And obviously, a lot of your decision making hinged on Elizabeth Dulau being secretly, like a lot of these actors, absolutely astounding. But when you're confronted with a character like that and the opportunity to show a little bit more, as you do in episode, I mix them up at 10, do you feel hindered by the lack of real estate, or do you feel inspired by the lack of real estate? And how do you go about deciding, as you just did with that, I can't protect you, Leo line, how do you go about deciding what is the right amount to give?
There's a meta answer to that too. I mean, I've spent my entire life as a screenwriter since since I first started trying to do it when I was 25, and this feeling, your eye is always up in the right-hand corner, man. Mm-hmm. My eye is always in that right-hand corner. That number up there is just it's a very stern, it's a very stern master, that number up there. And, I have relationships with all different kinds of numbers in the right-hand corner, like, oh man, I'm on 35. I'm already here. Fantastic. Everything's great. I don't think I ever on a movie script, I don't even know how many scripts I've done. I don't think there's ever been a case where I didn't get to page 85 and have a complete panic attack. Ever. Oh my God, it's 85. I only have 30 pages left. I'll never get it in there. It's so stern, that limited real estate that you have. I've never on this show felt limited at all. I've never felt it of all the other pressures that come on the show and running the show and all the other things that come on and the relentless pace of building the show for years. And it's literally a dairy farm. The cows have to be milked twice a day, no matter what. But what are the breaks? You don't have to reintroduce all the characters that you've already got up and running, and you don't have to, I almost never worry about what's up there. I can't tell you how long all of our various episodes are. I never really pay attention to it. So I've never been restricted by that. The negative space is obviously something that has been a real dominant narrative tool here. It's been a real experiment. It's really exciting for me, and I think for Danny and Bo and Tom, and I think to be able to play with new narrative toys, time and negative space, a really unusual experiment in this show. So it was very exciting to do it, but I never felt restricted by it. If anything, I think it helped me become more direct and more accurate.
The idea of time in this series, the idea of taking these year break, a year later,
Right.
and these are the 3 big days of that year, allows you to have a thriller inside of a sweeping epic every
Exactly.
3 hours, right? When you're writing to those kind of genre beats inside of something that's Lawrence of Arabia or Dr. Zhivago or grab your David Lean movie, like, are you having to change gears on the transmission to be like, okay, I know you just said you're looking at that page, you're not looking at that page number, you're not looking at how long these episodes are, but across those 3 episodes, are you like, all right, now we want to have stormtroopers amassing outside of Clea's safe house or whatever, like this, there's a ramp up to the sort of genre elements of it?
No, I think it's, I mean, there's some element of luck in this. And as we discussed before, and as we spent so much time talking as we were selling the show about the moment where Diego and I realized we couldn't do 5 seasons. And then I literally remember going back up to you said, oh my God, we have 4 years and 4 blocks. And I remember the hotel room in Pitlochry in this really wonderful little funky little hotel up in Scotland. And the little, I make a desk everywhere I go in all these hotel rooms and my little, and going back up there and thinking about that as an experiment and thinking, oh my God, I got to come back for the first time I come back is got to be the wedding. Am I going to do the wedding and then go for a month? And how long am I? And I was like, no. And let's do the 3 days of the wedding. And I thought, well, that'll work for this one. It can't possibly work for the other 3. But then by luck, they all like, wow, you can just sort of do the most intense 3 days of that year, and it won't feel manipulative to have everybody around the galaxy. I don't think people will feel it's a coincidence that you're putting them all in these intense 3 days. And then once they're sort of structured, what's supposed to happen, the real deep drop is to go, oh my God, this will accelerate. I can absolutely, we can write the way we normally write, and this will accelerate any inertia that might be gathered by the gaps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you just go full bore. Let's just write this full. We're writing full out for those 3 days like we normally would, but it was another unintended or unexpected get that it just drives it forward. So you're just, bam, let's go to the next one. Bam, let's go to the next one. It's, I wish I could say that I was just so prescient that I knew that this would all happen this way, but I was not.
I've kind of you mentioned Diego there, and I have a 2-part question related to him and his involvement in the show. It's funny about how you succeeded so broadly here that sometimes our attention is drawn from the main character whose name is on all the posters. But before I talk about the character, I did want to ask you about your relationship with Diego as a partner in this, because obviously he came with the house, and you had a tenant, and he's an executive producer on it. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about that creative partnership off screen before I ask you a few questions about his performance this season on screen.
I mean, I really can't get into Rogue. I don't really want to talk about Rogue, but we got very close on Rogue, and he was one of the, what can I say that's safe? Not everybody was happy I was there on Rogue and doing what we were doing. It was difficult for some people. For him, it was a salvation. So we always really got along. I got to know him on that show. He's just a wonderful guy. He's just a great hang. And I mean, he's one of those people that it's like Clooney or Clive Owen. The person that you think that's the guy. Like there's no hidden game. He's just a wonderful, generous, really intelligent, emotionally intelligent human being. And he's also a complete circus person. He's grown up in the theater from precognition. His father is one of the great stage designer and production designer of Mexican theater. And he just grew up in the theater. I mean, he's just part of it from the very beginning. And what he doesn't know is not worth knowing. It's really true. And he understands all of the responsibility that comes with being with number one on the call sheet. And so when they said they wanted to do a show with him, I go, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And then if you're going to marry up with somebody, boy, there's somebody that you could really be a partner with for, 5 years or however long we thought we were going to be doing it. And honest to God, over this entire experience, and we were in Japan before we came home, we had a very emotional sort of dinner with everybody there who was there before we left and split apart. I have never had a disagreement with him. I have never had a harsh word with him. I can't think of another relationship that I have of any substance where that is the case. But he is a true gentleman. He has. We haven't spent a lot of time dissecting scripts or worrying about plot points or many things. He's been very helpful with casting, obviously, and very informative about what's going on the set. He's a good representative for me there because I'm not there. He's an incredible monitor of the narrative flow of the story. And what happens is because we shoot out a sequence and because these are such long stories and 3 different directors, the directors oftentimes, as hard as they try to get their head around, they can't keep the whole show in their head. They'd actually not be doing their job if they did that. But someone there has to be keeping the whole show in their head. So the characters, the actors, the primary actors become deputized to make sure that everything's being honest. He's done a miraculous job of that. And when we need support, he speaks up. I just making it easy, man. The people that make it easier where it's at. Making your job look easy is really, that's the real benchmark. And he just makes it look easy. And also, last thing, not realizing that he's not going to be in every scene, that it's going to be a chorus, that he's going to share all these things. And that not only is that all going to accrue to him, but it also means he gets days off.
Smart.
Honest to God, episode 10 we're talking about, he's not in episode 10. I never heard anybody say, gee, do you think you could sneak him in here? He's feeling lonely, or he needs a dog so people like him, or I've never heard one silly actor thing from him.
It's such a generous and unselfish performance. I wondered if you could, on the flip side of that, talk about the character of Andor, because obviously it's the name of the show. But throughout, if you track the character's words, he's repeatedly and consistently dismissive of his own abilities. I think at one point he says he's just lucky. As the writer of the series, what do you think makes him special? Or is his ordinariness key to the show's opinion on what heroism actually is?
I mean, I'm tiptoeing to destiny, as you can see in the second season, I mean, I really am. I mean, I'm not saying he's Star Wars Jesus or something.
But he takes on messianic qualities towards the end. Yeah.
Totally. And the scene that was really important to me, that was a surprise, was the scene with Luthen and he at the back of the Senate, where even Luthen is just like, man, who are you? Like, you talk about the most rational, least mystical character in the show. The probably the last person who'd want to spend a minute with a Force healer. And Luthen is just bedazzled by, when he starts to put it together, who are you? All the things that you've been through, all the things you've lived through. Like, they never get to finish that conversation, which is cool because I don't know where that goes without getting dewy. But he reluctant destiny, or as Bill Gomans used to say, stupid courage. That is such a compelling. That is such a compelling character trait. It's and he just wore it like one of those jackets, like one of those groovy jackets. It's just he pulls the weight of that on so easily, and
it's interesting that you bring up that scene between Luthen and Cassian, because one of my sort of favorite aspects of watching the second season. Beginning, we talked with you about the scene with Cassian and Naya, I believe, in the Imperial base, and he's like, "You're coming home to yourself. This is why I do what I'm doing. Like, this is this great adventure you're about to embark on." All the way through some of the conversations that Clea has with Cassian and Vel and at Yavin, like at the end, is you can always get this. There's this little thing in the back of my mind where I'm wondering if these characters are running agents, even when they're connecting on an emotional level, or perhaps revealing something of themselves to get something from the person they're talking to. Is I still wonder, are you running this person? Are you, even Vel, who comes and says, Mon wants me to ask you what you found out there to verify it. And she's, so I'm giving you something here. I'm here on a mission, but that doesn't mean I don't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Val has she does it a couple of times. She won't play the game the way they want her to. She always tells everybody exactly what she's there for.
Yeah.
If you notice, I love that, that she does that. I think there probably is a switch that we're going off when we're making a scene, not really spoken out loud, but I think which one of those two modes are we in? I think that the Luthen scene for me with he in the back of at the back of the Senate is honest. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's playing him at all. I think, and that's a moment where I wasn't directing it. I don't know what the conversation was like with the actors at that point, or what Stellan doesn't like a lot of information, to be honest with you. He doesn't really, he's a pretty much a self-reliant actor. I'm not sure what the conversation was, but if I had been directing the scene, if I had been there and there was a problem or there was a question, I would have said, man, you're not, this is legit. You're legit here. There are places where, people are manipulating all the way through the show, aren't they?
Now that the series is over, I want to ask you your take on the Bix and Cassian relationship, because there's a beauty to it, there's a romance to it, there's a sadness to it, but there's also a core of practicality and realism to it, and her decision making. And I wondered how you considered it and the arc of it. Is it romance? Is it emotional support, clinging because they've known each other their whole lives? Did she know something about him ultimately that you feel he didn't know? I'm just curious, just now that it's in the rear view, how you considered that romance as you moved through it, that relationship.
I think they were each other's first kiss. I think they were, he says in the very beginning, there's a scene where he comes back, remember I used to sneak over the wall and your father caught me, in the yard in Ferrex. I think obviously they were two very good looking kids in Ferrex, right? And I'm sure they found each other pretty quick. And so I think I don't know exactly what soulmates means, but I think there's, my wife's Susan's heard me say this a million times before. There's different kinds of marriages. There's marriages where you meet after you're already who you are, and there's marriages where you grow up together, and my wife and I have grown up together. I think it's a hard way to go. It has unbelievable benefits in the end. There's no one else who knows you. There's no one else who knows all the stories. There's no one else who gets all the references and understands the provenance of every single thing about your life. That's the kind of relationship I think they have. I think it's beautiful. I think it's able to endure, all the side romances and side problems that they've had, all the Tims and all the Wendy's that they've had over the years. They really belong together. It's the utilitarian version of soulmate, right? And I think he knows when they are at the Force Healer and that stuff is happening. I think he's already felt and worried on some of the things that are being said there. In many ways, and I'm not trying to be, I don't mean this in any sexist way at all, but I think more women are more spiritually tropic than men are typically, in relationships anyway. In my experience, the first person in the who's going to go to the astrologist, or the first person who's going to say, I think we should try this, is more often than not, it's probably a bit of a stereotype, but she is playing that part, and she's freer in a way. She's more open to the idea, and she has dreamt. She she started dreaming about him before. She dreamt about him when she was in the prison and in the hotel. She's seeing it, and she's less afraid of it than he is. I think in the end, he can't. He looks at that force healer, doesn't he, on the way to the ship?
Yeah.
On the walk out, she's there. He knows it. He feels it.
I enjoyed, just as a personal exercise, and I'm sure it was to some extent the intention within the writer's room and when you're mapping it out, the twinning of characters, or, basically plotting people along parallel paths. That is never more clear than in the final moments between Cyril and Cassian, who have crossed galaxies to find each other finally in this brasserie. And Cyril's plot and his arc is one of the more original things I think I've seen, certainly in a Star Wars story, but in any kind of TV show where you're so invested in such a fucking an unlikable guy, but you can't help but feel everything fall apart for him in those last few scenes that he's alive, including the ultimate insult of "Who are you?" And I was just wondering broadly if you could talk about Kyle and that plot. Gorman is obviously, when we're recording this, everybody has got Gorman on the mind because of the episodes that have just aired, but I just couldn't get over the way his character ended. And
just the Wizard of Oz aspect of the way you introduced him is one of the most memorable introductions of any character in recent memory, adjusting his own uniform. The arc towards this end of the ultimate insult, despite everything, despite trying to be seen, despite trying to have a little flair, no one knows who he is. There's not even a question. I just had to say it.
No, I feel it. It's Greek. You really want to get there. I think we're the great beneficiaries in the show again of lucky casting. I mean, Kyle, I just cast in the room. I think he was the second person who came in to Nina's. This is pre-COVID, and he came in and he did the piece and he just left. And I said, well, we can stop now. That's clearly we're just going to do that. And she agreed. And you look at his resume. He doesn't have a remarkably memorable face. He doesn't have a remarkably memorable voice. He doesn't have some sort of, he doesn't have a hook. The guy has never, ever not booked the job. His resume is just one. He just moves from thing to thing to thing. He obviously walks in and he's just, so it's like, oh, okay, we feel really solid with this guy. As we went along, you realize how sympathetic and how gentle and how vulnerable he is as well, and how he can play that through everything. And you realize, Cyril's a character that could exist in so many shows. I mean, I've talked about it before. He could be a Dunder Mifflin, Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a universal character. And then he's also epically specific to this. I've been hiding my affection for him all the way through. I don't have to hide it anymore. It was nice to be able to come out on the junket and have people see the show where I could really talk about him as a romantic and not have people stare at me like, what are you talking about? Because that's who he is. He's a very, very, I feel very sad for him. I really do.
I guess the partner question to that would be to talk a little bit about Denise and Dedra, who I don't want to ask you, like, did she ever love him, or does she love him, or what kind of love is that? In the similar way to what Andy was asking about Cassian and Bix, their relationship twins Cassian and Bix to some extent. I found myself trying to decide what was a bigger insult, Cassian not knowing who he was, or Krennic referring to him as Dedra's fringy friend. Oh my God. I was really blown away by that. But, I think the scene where she's obviously got the shakes after Gorman is certainly related to what's just taken place, but also what just happened between her and Cyril in the last moments of his life Can you tell me a little bit about her performance as this absolutely magnetic character? I mean, just that upside down smile, that frown that she has is it says everything you need to know about the character, but then she does so much more.
You want to keep some element of chaos about every character. I think that's a really good rule of thumb for anybody who's writing. I think when you remove all the chaos and just strip them down, you run a great risk of them flattening out. And most people that we know, almost everybody that we know, is not a straight line. Everybody's got some chaos. With Dedra, it's a really burning furnace, but it's really, really small and it's really buried deep. Mm-hmm. And she's telling me how she feels about Cyril. I don't have a definition of what her relationship with him is. I could probably speak somewhat about Cyril's attraction to her and what she represents to him, and the replication of some alpha predator emotional dominance, or she represents the empire or order or just a success, or he just whatever. But her attraction to him and what he means to her, I'm letting her define that for me. But I think that furnace of chaos is unleashed in Gorman. And I think when she's in that box of a room, she's back in the Kinder block, or she's in Narkina 3, or she's in the box that she's been trying to get out of her whole life,
I've two kind of process questions for you, and I'll give you a specific holding pen for the answer, if you don't mind. But specifically, let's start with, we're talking about Gorman. Let's talk about 208. Which is the massacre episode. I'm curious about how that episode gets shaped in terms of what you want to accomplish with it, what you bring into the room for conversation, and how you specifically balance the A-story beats, which we've been talking about, like Dedra and Cyril's, the end of their relationship, let's call it that, with the specific scenes of what is going to be happening in the plaza and how to scaffold that for maximum impact. So the two elements of crafting that episode between the emotional story that's important to you and then also the visual dynamism of what has to happen action-wise. If it's even possible to sort of articulate in a...
Yeah, no, I mean, structurally, it was a different structure before coming out of the room. And Luke and I had built Gorman and brought a pretty specific Gorman into the room when we went. So, we had a lot of the pieces for what the economy was and how it was going to work and what it might look like and the scale of it, and that it would have to run over 5 episodes to be economically viable. We can't build a set that big if we're not going to use it that much. But Danny kind of got boned on this because we were really going to do the massacre. I think the massacre occupied, I'd have to go back and look, maybe 2/3 of the episode. And then the last third of the episode would have been mostly what happened in 209. So it was a very long episode. It was really, we're trying to pack a lot in there because we really wanted to do 209 was a standalone episode, K2 episode that was sort of like, it was its own deal, where it was a transport with Vel and Melshi and Cassian were on the thing. They were smuggling stuff to Yavin and they got overrun by a thing. And then the K2 was on the ship. It was a whole contained massive, and it was kind of a little masterpiece that he made. When that became economic, that had to fall off the budget. And again, the show was better for it, but it fell off. Was about the time that we were realizing, I think simultaneously, that the events of 209 were, the Senate stuff was too juicy and too good and too had the chance for being, it had so many opportunities in it. It was a shame to rush it. And then we also then came to the idea that, you know what, if we're going to do the massacre, we should just do the freaking massacre and we should just do it and let it, if we really do it right, who's going to want anything else on it?
Right.
It should just really be, It should just really be the steak on the plate. So that all got rebuilt and rejiggered around, and there was still some rejiggering about the top of 8 and 9 as we went along. But then you're building that, and then it's a question of what can we do? We have the town square. How many extras can we get? How long can we shoot it? What's the architecture? What are the it really comes down to, in all of these things, how long does it take to walk from here to there? How long could people be firing and shooting before everyone was dead? How long should it be before this happens? Well, how much time do we have? How much attendance can we take? How many characters can we carry and stories can we maintain throughout that plaza as it goes? I mean, they become there's a whole narrative architecture part of it. And then by that point, the director and the AD and the DP are very much involved, and it's Janis Metz directed it. But Sean Guest, who is the assistant director on this episode, was specifically hired because he's just he's a legendary, unbreakable AD. Because we're going to be outside, we're going to be there for a month. You're going to have 300-400 people you got to wrangle. You got to keep. I mean, it's a real physical. And Sean Guest came in. Mark Hatton, who's shooting it, is pretty much hired because he's another beast. You can't have somebody with a low pain threshold who's going to come in there and shoot that block. It has to be. So Janis is surrounded by people who really are rugged about it. Zana's getting us all the resources we need to do it. Luke is, making sure that everything works around that square for us. Mark Maley, who is our unheralded stunt coordinator and second unit builder, has to build the fight and not only has to build the fight in the cafe, but he has to do all of the stunts, all of the stuff in the square is Mark Maley and his crew and team. That all has to be prevised. It all has to be worked out in a rehearsal thing. It all has to be filmed on an iPhone and then filmed on a camera and rebuilt. I mean, and then we get it and then we have too much.
And it's cut. Yeah.
And then, the first cuts come in, you're like, oh my God, no one could stay out there that long. And then, and Janis and Jan Miles are cutting, go, no, we need all this stuff. And Johnny and I are like, no, you got to cut another 2 minutes out of it. And they're like, it can't be done. And then, as it can. And then they're like excited that it can be done. And it's just, man, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Sound department, Brandon comes in and it's like, what's the soundtrack for this?
Mm-hmm.
And we had put in those horns, I said, man, give me those. I'll go really inside because we're tiling, because we only have 300 extras and we need to make it look like more smoke. Where do we get smoke from? So we go, you know what? When people keep bees, they have smokers. So maybe the guys have smokers when they do the spiders. So when we make the promotional film for Gorman, we'll put smokers in there. So when the people come through the streets, they have these horns that they blow that are part of the agriculture, and then they have these smokers that they come through. So it's organic to the civilization, but it fits to the.
And it has like the European football match walk up.
Exactly.
Kind of feel,
It's like every trick in the book.
It's so wild. The level.
Everybody scrumming together to try to make that party.
The level of granular thinking on both sides of the ball here is so awe-inspiring because you're thinking about the smokers for practical reasons and also cultural reasons. And then there's a whole swath of fandom being like, Clea sounds like Leia. Here's how that's who she is. Like everybody's coming at it with their particular specificities.
I know.
But
this is why Danny and I are saying yesterday, it's like, everyone's talking about, but like, we were worried about,
the other thing.
Oh, yeah.
So one other process question. The majesty of the show is that I'm asking about two very specific, very different things in specific ways in back-to-back episodes. So you mentioned 209. I would just like to take this moment to say thank you. That is my Star War forever. That's my favorite one.
Parliamentary procedure
and how it can go wrong.
You like Bourne Star Wars.
Yeah. Then. I mean, we saw you're making the show. That's literally what we said. And here we are.
We finally got there.
Years later. It's a brilliant episode, and it's so gripping. But what I wanted to ask you about specifically was, again, process-based. The episode, as I've learned after watching it and loving it, is a delicate dance with canon. I have been informed, and I have now learned that, like, Mon Mothma gives a speech, and a second speech that is, in the cartoons, and there's a separate rescue mission and all of this. just wondering how you learned, and you can talk specifically within this episode if it's easy, to kind of embrace those pre-established beats as an opportunity to scaffold something interesting, as opposed to a hardship, right? That like, wait, we can't do the thing that we're careening towards doing.
I must be drawn to that or good at it or something. I did it in Born Legacy where we were like, what do? We put the other movie behind it. Like, oh my God. And then if you see, like, I was very annoyed when I came back to do Andor from Rogue that in the fan fiction or in some of the other canon, they already had a backstory on Wikipedia that Cassian Andor was from a planet called Fest. And I was like, what is this? My job one was like, I got to explain this guy's accent. It drove me crazy on Rogue that people had accents, but they spoke English, but they never spoke another language with each other. I was like, what is that about? So I wanted to explain his accent. So I retconned that in a way. I said, oh, that's the story that Marva told the officials because they didn't want her to know that he was really from Kenari. And that's how it got into Wikipedia. So fine. It's that kind of hijacking. So the same thing here. They didn't. I love it. Gorman was never specified. They never had any information about it. It was a blank slate, but there was 2 Gorman massacres they had their own problem with canon. And if you talk to Star Wars aficionados pre-Andor and mention the Gorman massacre, their definition of it would be depending on whether they watched Legends or watched, the cartoon. So I don't know. I arbitraged the gap there and said, okay, print the legend and we'll make this, actually turn this into something. The line that really made it for me is when Cassian, after he's told, hey, it's, they're going to take her off. It's better for PR reasons if they bring her and whatever. When he lands back at Yavin and Draven is there and he gets back in and he gets off the ship and he comes off and Draven says, oh my God, I hope you understand. It's better if she's with, he goes, I don't give a fuck. And
we were talking about that on the way in.
He says he's going to make a speech. He goes, I've heard her speak.
Yeah.
that was the time we felt your authorial fingerprint the most.
One more process question that also ties into maybe the other anchor of the show, aside from Diego and the Cassian character, is Stellan and Luthen. In 10, especially, I really felt the passage of time with him. Not only because we get to see a bit about him, I believe in 10 or is it 11 that you get the flashbacks to Clea with Luthen? 10. Not only because you see the younger version of him, but also because of these little details like Clea having to remind him to tuck his shirt in, his changing attitudes about the ideas of perfect, these little things that you really feel the 5 years for that character and maybe a perception that there is a horizon coming. Was there a mechanism in writing to sort of annotate where these people are on a long arc within these episodes so that you can say, this is now at the point, this is what's happened to Luthen over the intervening years that means he doesn't tuck his shirt in on the most important day of his life?
Luthen is the easiest character for me to identify with in the show. I mean, I'm not getting any younger. Yeah. I mean, the show took its toll on me the same way the rebellion is taking the toll on Luthen. In a way, it's the same time frame. It's 5 years. It's very easy for me to relate to the entropy. And it was always, it's easy to. I mean, it wasn't hard to figure out what those markers would be as he degraded with Yavin and with the relationships around him. Stellan's age itself was working in the right direction for us, the same way, Wilmon's age is working in the right direction for us, as Diego's age is working in the wrong direction. So, Stellan's wasn't getting any younger on the show either. And so it was easy to just naturally fit into, it's kind of natural what was going to happen, I think.
Yeah. I found the scene with him and Lonnie another indicator of that. First of all, maybe my favorite scene in the show.
God, that's good.
The final scene between them?
Yeah. Just the way Alonso did it, but also there's that quick flash where he's got a little bit of that ego where he's like, what are they saying about me? And he's like, it's not fucking about you. There's a goddamn battle station above us. and that last bit of running an agent where Lonnie is just looking for that carrot, and he says, yeah, Yavin will be safe there. Yeah.
I need to know if we have fast or good. Which one are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Look over here. Yeah, no, he's and Robert M's. These actors.
They're unbelievable.
And the directors. You're right, Alonzo. We talked about Ariel's contribution, and we talked a little. Obviously Giannis is, building the massacre, but Alonzo comes in, and these are 3 very delicate episodes at the end. They require a different sort of touch, and they require really kind of it was really pleasing to know that we had more of someone with more a more visually ambitious and a more pushy kind of artistry in a way.
Luthen walking down the steps kind of thing. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. And to get in there was more. And the hospital to me is just a miracle, because we weren't supposed to be able to pay for the hospital. And it was just such a huge negotiation, and we had out of money. And I remember at one point in a horrible meeting at Pinewood where there was just like, oh my God, you can have a hallway and a thing, and you can have an emergency room, and you can have this, and we'll do that. And you have to rewrite it. It has to be this. And somehow Luke managed to, that hospital is the greatest set for a director I have ever been part of. The sight lines, the architecture of it. If you go back and look at it again,
here coming for her.
Oh my God, the fact that it's designed in this horseshoe, and you can see who's over there, and you can see what's over here, and you always know where you are, is just, it's my fantasy set. And Alonzo just shot the hell out of it. Yeah.
Tony, just as we steer towards wrapping up here, like this might be, you might still be too in it to comment, but I am curious about your perspective, having made the show and having had the career that you have had and continue to have, about what this accomplishment means or doesn't mean, quite frankly, for where we're at with film storytelling. I think Chris and I know you've heard us say this in person and on the podcast, talk a lot about how increasingly it seems like the most original ideas have to be Trojan horsed into pre-existing IP or into a larger shared cinematic universe or whatever. We talk about that and we flag examples of, well, they did the best they could. And that's almost a new kind of praise that we give, being like, I see the intention, and then Thanos snapped his fingers, but they did their best. Right. You've done it. We love this show. We think it's a miracle. We think it stands on its own. And it is also an incredible revitalization of Star Wars. Do you come out the other side of it feeling like, look, it's possible? Or do you not have that particular perspective on well, this is the way things have to go if one wants to make the shows they want to make?
I've seen civilizations rise and fall in Hollywood. Man, I worked for Gollum and Globus. I worked for Canon. I worked for Interscope, dynastic company. Castle Rock, dynastic company. I've read so many. It's the beginning of this. It's the end of that. And I'm also second generation. So I watched, this is the end of films. It's television. I am leery of any kind of grand thesis, because I've seen too many things roll over. People clearly need stories. They need them bad. That's really what they want. I think we said this before, you go anywhere, as bad as the business may be, that's all people talk about, what they're watching. You have a show based on just watching what other people watch. It's it's an essential need at this point. So I'm not fearful of that. The economics are really rugged right now. It's really rough out there for economics. But there are more people who are capable of doing this than there probably ever were before. There's a lot of frauds. There's a lot of people that shouldn't be doing this that are doing it. It's sort of like it's expansion baseball or something, there's only a certain number, but there's more people I think that can do it than ever before. And there's more of a history and canon for people to look at and go, I want to do that. I want to do something like that. I would be violating a very basic personal dictum if I tried to give an overarching idea of what I thought the movie business or the storytelling business was going to do. Right now, today, this minute, I'm more worried about what's going to happen on the planet than I am about what's going to happen in Hollywood. And I think I think that's probably a universal anxiety. I have no idea what AI is going to do. The terror of AI that I had when it first came out and have had sort of spasmodically throughout its gestation period is probably a little bit assuaged right now by some people that I've talked to recently who are discussing AI's problems, and that AI has a functional basic problem. I don't know if that's true. I don't know what AI will do. I should be sage about this, and I should have some sort of really great historical perspective on it. But all history's taught me is that it keeps rolling, and people need stories. If you complain about it, if you bitch about it, it's like complaining about the weather. It's useless. Oh, we can't do this anymore. Oh, it used to be this. It used to be that. I don't ever want to be that dude. I really don't. I don't want to make that mistake. I watched a generation of writers before me do that, and I think we've all learned from that. It's not a good way to go. You got to roll. You got to go with what's there right now. But it's tough out there. It's tough right now.
My last question is about the very beginning. Well, not the very, very beginning, but maybe the beginning of the Andor process for you. Which, and correct any of my historiography here if I'm wrong. That you wrote this memo to Kathy Kennedy that was like, here's why you shouldn't do this show. But if you were going to do it, this is how you need to do it. I was wondering if you had revisited that document anytime recently, and if there was anything in there that you thought you got wrong, and what of it did you say, oh, I nailed it with that idea?
Oh no, it's about 7-8 pages long. I looked at it about a year ago. It's because it came up somewhere. I have it in here, but it's dead on. It's basically because they kept trying to make a show with the two of them storming the Citadel. That was the pilot, storming the Citadel. Get the disc, get the Tesseract, get the freaking thing. Like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Like, you can't do that every week, or you could. I don't know who's going to watch that, but you're going to run out of protein for stories very, very quickly. I mean, there's a bunch of shows that are on where you watch and you go like, where are they going to go? What are they going to feed on going forward? They just killed their, they killed their forward motion. And I was basically saying, you have a story waiting for you. You have this guy. Pick him up on the worst day of his life. Make it 5 years ago. Find somebody who's the least likely person to be in Rogue One, to least likely be that guy, but who's wearing the same clothes and has the same name. Start him there. Make it as hard as you possibly can to get to Rogue, and save the droid for as late as possible. I mean, that's been a negotiation all the way through to push K2 down to the end of the line. I mean, it's really. You can imagine the appetite for him, for the audience, for Disney, for everybody. Like, how soon can we get him? And Alan's just brilliant at it. It's a brilliant character. People freaking love it. When you're in Tokyo at Celebration, when he comes out, the place goes nuts. So you're like, how long are we going to hold the headliner? But I said, you just can't do it. It's death, story death. And so that document is pretty dead on. It's pretty much. It's the beginnings of the show that we made, for sure.
Tony, we're big fans of you and of your work, and we know both on the record and off the record, like struggles and things just to get things made, to get things over the finish line, to get the chance to do it. You did it with this one. You absolutely did it, and the fact that you did it with such a big, the biggest toys in the store. And with a big audience and big platform, but also found a way to use all the things that do motivate you. Like you just said, you're more scared about the state of the world, and this is an expressly political show, rich with history and things that, as you've said in other interviews, you've spent time reading, not necessarily for an artistic goal, just to learn. The softest softball question of all is, how are you feeling today? COVID aside. Having put this out there,
I'm really, I don't know what to do with myself. There's a level of affirmation that is antithetical to everything that got you there. You know,
Yeah.
you don't get here by, I mean, you have to summon a lot of confidence every day to be able to write and do that. But it's a different thing. I always get overwhelmed and I get emotional at affirmation. And I think a lot of people do. I'm bathing in it right now. It's overwhelming. It's a wonderful thing. I'm not complaining. It's just an absolute miracle. I think we all are. And the people who worked on the show, we just keep calling each other or texting each other going, oh my God, or did you see this? Or holy cow. I mean, try to imagine what it feels like. You know, it's really, I'm very, very pleased. I'm sure in a few months I will stand back and not be able to believe what we did. I don't understand. I'll probably not understand or remember how we got there. I have that experience on other things. It's like, how did we do that? I'm blown away, and I know that I'm honored. I'm lucky, and I know that in the end, though, I know that I'll wake up at 4:00 in the morning going like, what the fuck am I going to do tomorrow? And if I don't find something to occupy myself, I'll go crazy. It's the making of stuff that keeps me sane. And it's my place to hide out making stuff. And affirmation is a really great bath, but it's not, I don't take a lot of baths every year. I'm a shower guy. I get back in the shower.
Well, we'll let you towel off then.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. It's been really enriching having these conversations with you over the course of the last 2 seasons, these last couple of years. It's been
really good to get to know you guys too, man. It's been a really cool place to be. It really has been.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for joining us and congratulations on everything because you really deserve it.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Tony.
taking it in.